Someone wants to use a simple, well-known file conversion website to quickly turn a document into a PDF for a client. The company's network blocks it instantly, along with a dozen other apparently harmless tools, a note-taking app, a free online whiteboard, a popular productivity extension. None of these tools seem remotely dangerous. They're free, widely used, and the employee has used similar tools at previous jobs without any issue at all. The IT department isn't being arbitrarily controlling, and they aren't simply behind the times either. In a lot of organizations, that blocked website represents a genuine, carefully considered risk calculation, one where the actual danger has less to do with the specific tool itself and everything to do with what happens to company data the moment it leaves a controlled environment. It's genuinely easy to feel like the restriction is personal, standing there staring at a blocked page message while a deadline gets closer, without ever seeing the much larger, much slower calculation happening somewhere else in the building that led to that specific block existing in the first place. IT security policy gets experienced by employees as a series of seemingly arbitrary restrictions, annoying friction standing between a person and the fastest, easiest way to get a task done. And from the employee's immediate perspective, that framing feels accurate. The block tool really would make the task faster. But according to research published by enterprise cybersecurity firms and IT governance organizations, a significant share of corporate application blocking policy is driven by a specific, well-documented risk category called shadow IT, referring to any software, app, or online service employees use for work purposes without formal review, approval, or oversight from the organization's IT and security teams. And shadow IT has been repeatedly identified in industry research as one of the leading contributing factors in corporate data breaches and compliance violations. This distinction matters because it reframes the block from a judgment about the specific tool's quality into a judgment about visibility and accountability. The organization isn't necessarily saying the tool is bad. It's saying nobody with security responsibility has been able to verify what happens to data once it enters that tool systems. Let's start with the basic mechanics of why an individually harmless-seeming tool becomes a genuine organizational risk once it's used with company data, because the risk isn't really about the tool's core function at all. When an employee uploads a document to a free online conversion tool, that document, along with whatever information it contains, leaves the company's controlled network environment and enters a third-party system the organization has no visibility into, no contractual data handling agreement with, and no ability to verify security practices for. The technical process works like this. IT security teams evaluate approved tools based on specific criteria: how the vendor stores and encrypts data, whether the vendor has undergone independent security audits, whether the vendor's data handling complies with relevant industry regulations, and what contractual guarantees exist regarding data retention, deletion, and breach notification. Criteria that a free, unreviewed consumer tool almost never satisfies, regardless of how legitimate or useful that tool genuinely is for its intended purpose. This is where an invisible compliance mechanism takes over, one that most employees never see explained clearly anywhere beyond a generic IT policy document. Many industries operate under specific regulatory frameworks governing how certain types of data must be handled: healthcare organizations under HIPAA, financial services companies under various banking and securities regulations, companies handling European customer data under GDPR, each imposing specific, legally binding requirements about where data can be stored, how it must be encrypted, and what happens if that data gets exposed. An employee uploading a client document containing regulated information to an unapproved third-party tool can create a genuine compliance violation and legal liability for the entire organization, regardless of whether any actual data breach occurs, simply because the act of transmitting that data outside approved, audited systems itself violates the specific regulatory requirement, meaning the organizational risk exists the moment the data leaves the approved environment, independent of whether the unapproved tool ever mishandles it in any way. There's a related invisible mechanism tied to how a single unapproved tool creates risk that extends well beyond the individual employee using it. Corporate IT security operates on a principle sometimes called reducing the attack surface, meaning every additional piece of software with access to company data, company credentials, or the company network represents another potential entry point a malicious actor could exploit, another software supply chain the organization depends on without direct oversight, and another set of security vulnerabilities the organization's own security team has no visibility into or ability to patch. A free tool that seems completely unrelated to sensitive systems can still become a genuine attack vector if that tool's own infrastructure gets compromised, since employees often reuse credentials or work while logged into other company systems in adjacent browser tabs, meaning a compromised, unapproved tool can become a stepping stone toward accessing systems that were never intended to be reachable through it at all. Two real-world patterns make this concrete. Multiple enterprise cybersecurity surveys and incident response reports have consistently identified shadow IT and unauthorized third-party tool usage as a significant contributing factor in documented corporate data breaches and compliance failures, with industry research estimating that a meaningful share of organizations experience at least one security incident directly attributable to unsanctioned software or services within any given year. A second pattern shows up specifically in how IT departments handle app approval requests, where organizations with more mature security programs have increasingly implemented formal processes allowing employees to request evaluation of specific tools rather than simply blocking everything by default. A practice security researchers have specifically recommended as a way to balance genuine security requirements against the legitimate productivity costs of overly broad blocking policies that frustrate employees without proportionally reducing actual risk. This challenges the common assumption that IT blocking policies reflect either excessive caution disconnected from real risk or a simple failure to keep pace with useful new tools employees discover. In reality, a meaningful share of blocking decisions reflect a considered trade-off between individual task efficiency and organizational-level risk exposure that most employees never see the full calculation behind, since the actual danger being managed. Data, leaving controlled environments, compliance violations, expanded attack surface, operates at a scale and with consequences that aren't visible from the perspective of someone just trying to convert a single document. The friction point isn't that IT security concerns are illegitimate. The underlying risks are genuinely well documented across the industry. It's that blocking policies frequently get communicated to employees with little explanation of the specific reasoning behind them, making a considered risk management decision feel indistinguishable from arbitrary restriction to the person experiencing it as friction. Zoom out, and this same individually reasonable action creates disproportionate organizational-level risk. Pattern shows up in other institutional security and compliance systems people encounter regularly. Hospital data systems similarly restrict access to unapproved devices and software specifically because patient health information carries the same kind of regulatory liability and breach consequences regardless of how convenient a specific unapproved tool might be for a specific clinical task. Financial institutions apply comparable restrictions around personal email and messaging apps for work communication, not because any individual message is inherently dangerous, but because financial regulations require specific record-keeping and monitoring capabilities that consumer messaging platforms were never designed to provide, creating the same category of compliance risk regardless of how harmless any individual conversation happens to be. So the next time a seemingly harmless website or app gets blocked by a company's IT policy, it's worth remembering what that restriction likely represents. It probably isn't a sign that the specific tool is dangerous in any obvious, direct sense, or that IT simply hasn't gotten around to approving something useful. It's more likely a deliberate trade-off, weighing one person's immediate task efficiency against a category of organizational risk, data exposure, regulatory compliance, expanded attack surface, that only becomes visible when you zoom out from the single document someone was just trying to convert.